So, good morning, everybody. I would like to tell you why. I go back. So, Elvis tries to tell why he left his girl, and I will try to tell you why we use the Gavi. Myself, I'm Martin Greuner. I'm the lab director in Saarbrücken, Germany, and I'm a senior clinical embryologist since 1997. And we are doing vitrification for the last 10 years. And so I have no conflict of interest because I am employed by IVF-SAAR and I'm just doing lectures, sometimes about different themes. So, tell me why vitrification? That's the first question, because you have two possibilities of freezing. We know we have the slow freezing and the vitrification, and we had a consensus meeting in Istanbul, what was very, very interesting. And there all the experts where I can join also, we were just sure that the vitrification has better survival rates and the results are just better. And you even see that when you freeze oocytes, cleat stage embryos and blastocysts, and especially for them the vitrification is superior. But even for pre-end stages, you can freeze them by slow freezing, but the survival rates and the pregnancy rate just better by vitrification. So normally the most vitrification steps, normally you use manual vitrification with a straw. I just have some examples. That's what is common, I think. And for sure you can do that. And why we do automatic vitrification? In these straws, you have a straw where you have to pipette your cells on. And what we use in the lab is normally to handle the cells and pipette them into a dish, because that's the normal way we do it. And when you have the Gavi pot, that's the same thing. So we have a dish, we have a pot where you can just pipette your things in, and that's what is routine for everybody in the lab. To do the vitrification manually, it's just more learning curve, more learning time, that you can do it very, very proper. So the vitrification itself is a method where you have to be very proper with your procedure. So the timing is very, very important. When you have not the right timing, the cells will not survive. And so it's, you have to have a high concentration for the lab staff that they do the vitrification and to be very precise. And that's where Gavi is the right thing, because Gavi is doing these things which are critical. And so Gavi also, you have the learning curve, because you're just pipetting a cell into a dish, what you do always. The learning curve is not so fast. And the manual vitrification is often an open system. So I think the risk of contamination is not a really risk, but the government in Germany, they think about that. So they always say, we don't want to have an open system because it could be, and so you have to have a closed system, and the Gavi is closed. So for me, when we have an explanation by the government, that's no problem. When we see how the vitrification is done and how the differences between the embryologists, you see that you have a big learning curve, and it depends who is doing the vitrification. And by the Gavi, it doesn't matter, because everybody in the lab can vitrify a cell in a dish or in a pot, and so even when you see that in your results, that the survival rates are always nearly the same. So get back, also every good thing has bad things. So tell me why not using the Gavi. And I think the main thing is the money. So the device, the Gavi is not small. Okay, for somebody who has a really small lab, that also could be a problem. We have a big lab, so it doesn't matter how big it is. But the money, that is a problem for the chiefs, for the method to use it. So it's very very expensive, and I think the genera has to work on that. And that's the reason why I think it's not commonly used, and that can be a problem, because when another lab says we want to have cells from you, or the patient wants to travel to another lab, they are not used to the Gavi. They have not the storage system of that, and even that is not so easy. The other thing is, I think that's not a problem, but you have to stick with the Gavi when he's doing the work. So the Gavi is doing the pipette things, and that takes about 50 minutes. And that 50 minutes, you can do your documentation and all these things, but you have to be with the Gavi because you have to take it and put it into the nitrogen. So that step is not automatically, so you cannot forget it completely. But when you're doing a lot of freezing, you can then do the documentation in the other words, so you can freeze and freeze one after the other. So I just want to take together why we use the Gavi. So we in Germany, we have the embryo protection law. That means that we are not allowed to do all the cells in culture. And that means that we are always freezing a lot of PN stages. So we are also allowed, when we have more blastocysts, to freeze the blastocysts. But it's often that we freeze more than 20, even up to 30, 40 cells in the morning. And the PN stages, the problem for us is that we have to freeze them before they get a zygote. So normally when we look the cells at 8 o'clock, we have to be finished about 11, 12 o'clock. So we have a short time window. And when you freeze a lot of cells, it's very stressful because you have to have the exact incubation time. So you have to be very precise in your method. And for the staff, it's really easy because they don't have to care about that. They're just pipetting the things in the cells, and the Gavi are doing the steps which can be critical. So I just put together a little bit this time window which we have, and when you do vitrification and you pipette 2 cells for oocytes or PN stages on the straw, or 1 blastocyst, then when you have about 40 cells PN stages to freeze, you have with the Gavi only about 5 automatic vitrifications, because you can freeze 8 cells together. When you do that by manual vitrification, you have to go through the jobs, and you can do that similar. So you can interleave it a little bit, but even then the concentration that you have to have gets higher and higher. So the risk just also is higher then. And so you have to do the documentation, then you do the manual vitrification, and you have to do that one after the other, and it takes just time. And even the first step, 15 minutes in ES, and vitrification, then the 60 seconds. And when you put that together, and even when you interleave the things, you about 3 hours, 4 hours to do that. With the Gavi, it's just easier because you just pipette the things in the pot, and then you have time to do the documentation. And then it's freezing. In this case, when you have PN stages, they can 2 in a device, you can freeze 8 cells in 15 minutes. So you can do it in 2 hours, and it's no problem for us to be in the right time. And the results, they're just the same as a manual vitrification. So when you look at the papers, when you look at our own results, it doesn't matter. We started when we do vitrification with Kitasato. Now we switched 2017 to the Gavi, and the results are just the same. So they are not better, but they are no worse. And when you see in the literature, you can see that the survival rates and the implantation rates, they are comparable between the cryotab and the Gavi. So the results are the same, but we get able to freeze so many cells, and that's very important for us. So to put everything together, we have with the Gavi a very high precision, precise method with exact timing for the vitrification, what's very important for the cells. We have a closed system, so even for the government, when they have, they would like to see that, we have not the problem. It's very easy to handle because you just pipette things into a dish, what you always do. You can freeze 4 embryos together, or for 8 on-sites or PN stages. So it just takes 18 minutes or 14 minutes for one freezing step. And during that step, you can do your documentation and other things. And that's very lovely. And I also like the storage system because you have two colors, it's a two-color system, and you can have a label where you can write on all the things from the patient. But we have a very big lab, so we don't have the problem that we cannot have so many tanks. So that could be a problem when you have just a very small lab. Even the size of the Gavi can be a problem when your lab is very, very small. But that's not my problem, so I love to have it. So that is a storage device, where it's very, very easy to put the devices into this thing, and you have two colors, you can see it very, very fast, and then you have even the documentation on it, so that's very easy to handle. And all this is also put together in the paper of Miwa, and all these things what he is telling about, it's the same thing what we see in the lab. So we see that the variation in the embryologists is very small because you're always pipetting things and that's it. And when you do it manually, like here with the Cryo-Top, then you have big different variations because everybody is a little bit different. One is faster, one is slower. So that can be a problem. Even the learning curve, the contamination, there's no risk because it's a closed system. And the only thing what is a problem is the cost, I think. And that's even for us a problem. So I think thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to my team because they allow me to be here and share my experience. Thank you very much.